ideation seizes on the physical plane, and memory is in abeyance. Thus, for the time being, mind is not, because the organ through which the ego manifests ideation and memory on the material plane has temporarily ceased to function. A noumenon can become a phenomenon on any plane of existence only by manifesting on that plane through an appropriate basis or vehicle. And during the long night of rest called pralaya, when all the existences are dissolved, the universal mind remains as a permanent possibility of mental action, or as that abstract absolute thought of which mind is the concrete relative manifestation. The Ahi Dian Kohans are the collective hosts of spiritual beings, the angelic hosts of Christianity, the Elohim and messengers of the Jews, who are the vehicle for the manifestation of the divine or universal thought and will. They are the intelligent forces that give to and enact in nature her laws, while themselves acting according to laws imposed upon them in a similar manner by still higher powers, but they are not the personifications of the powers of nature, as erroneously thought. This hierarchy of spiritual beings through which the universal mind comes into action is like an army, a host, truly, by means of which the fighting power of a nation manifests itself, and which is composed of army corps, divisions, brigades, regiments, and so forth, each with its separate individuality or life, and its limited freedom of action and limited responsibilities, each contained in a larger individuality to which its interests are subservient, and each containing lesser individualities in itself.
Wow. So we've got an army of help out there. All we got to do is tap into it, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. You said a lot when what you read there. Do we have other comments or questions? We've got a couple more minutes.
That is the definition of consciousness.
Yes, that's exactly what Marie Renee read. You know, it's a part of what she read, and a key part of what she read. Yeah.
But we're self-conscious.
We are
because
self-conscious.
We have to work through our own brain, and during dream state, what happens is that the frontal lobe is inactive, but the back of the brain is active. This part of the brain is active at all times, but its threshold falls lower than the frontal lobe during the active period, which is our daytime activity. But at night, it keeps up all of the automatic activities of the being in order. But through it is what we call dream state is reached.
So you kind of touched on our third eye, it's often called.
No, that's not
That's
the
that third eye, the pineal gland, which is.
No,
yeah,
that's your occult center. That's not what I'm talking about. This
Okay.
is purely the brain.
Purely the brain. Okay.
Okay.
Cerebellum is this part of it.
We see this idea of consciousness. If you look below the human kingdom, for instance, at the insects, and there are many forms that are in the insect world, and as above below. So, and it's also stated that as the beings go through certain levels of consciousness, the form is suited to that particular level of consciousness. So taking that axiom of as above below, and we know that there's so many forms above man, I'm just envisioning here the numerous forms that could be, above this human form. What makes this, even though the form is human, but the body is animal, right here that we're in. So it's just like the normal in Star Wars and the pictures that we've seen of beings who could be human in their world, and but we've just seen several forms. And just like, for instance, now let's say the Buddha, who could be on different planes of consciousness, at different times or at the same time. Okay, so a being that's not limited to a certain form, let's say, even though he's or it, or let's say he or she is sitting here speaking to us in this particular form, but at the same time, on a different plane, he or she is occupying another form on a different plane. And there could be just numerous forms that this person can occupy. You see what I'm trying to
it struck this student,
It's not- it's a
can
comment,
I, as
pretty
a
much.
comment, but this student just thought of something for the first time. The Buddha we know that the great beings can do that. They can embody themselves wherever they want, they can transform almost instantly at will. And be in different places, and be in different places at the same time, if you will, in different bodies. Can we do that as individuals? Are we influencing this world around us? Maybe not in not that dramatic a way, immediately, but we are having an impact on others around us as they are having an impact on us.
Right. In other words, just like how the higher kingdoms are affecting the consciousness of the lower forms of life in those lower forms. And as well as there are varieties of forms, and the example was like insects and animals.
Mm-hmm.
So then can you say, conversely, can you say that we are being affected by higher forms beyond us in this human form?
That's why the Mahatmas are here to try to help us. Yeah.
For good or bad, whatever.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that gets into the idea of discrimination. There are these more developed beings, if you will, who are menical as well, those who are trying to do us good, and that's where we have to develop our personal discrimination, because we are self-conscious beings, to know which way to go. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying is that we look up to these more developed beings, like maybe our dog looks up to us as a master, if you will. We look up to these more developed beings, the Mahatmas. They are the good more developed beings. Just it's a chain process.
Right. And whereas we may occupy just one vehicle at one time, but a developed being could occupy several forms
Of course.
At the same time, depending on where he or she needs to do their work.
So you're suggesting they could occupy you and me at the same time, and maybe we could speaking through you and me.
Well, not that. I'm just saying, if in the case of the Buddha, if the Buddha was on the astral plane, then he would occupy a different vehicle than being here, but it could be simultaneously. The consciousness that he is emitting here on the physical plane would not necessarily be the same type of consciousness that he would be emitting on the astral plane, speaking or communicating with whoever he needed to communicate with.
Because in
conscious.
other words, know your audience, if you will. He could be communicating differently, if you will.
Well,
okay, we got.
Has one comment to say.
All right.
And that is that none of us are separate from one another.
Exactly.
All life is one, and we each individual make a part of the other. You're all talking like everything is separate out there. It isn't. That is the elusive part, that we look that way, but we are not that way.
Okay, it was this student's understanding that we all are one, if you will. But Josh had a comment.
Well, it's just.
But we need that. That brings us back to reality. What you just read.
Well, certainly true. That is all one consciousness, but we look at it in a kind of, ontologically useful way to learn about how we exist in this world. It occurred to me that not only is the Buddha actively conscious on those different things, but we are, in our own way, actively conscious, not as self-conscious. When we're sevenfold beings, the principles of our nature are such that those are all different levels of consciousness that we are active on at all times, to a greater or lesser degree for each one of those, for each individual of self-consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
It's that self-awareness or self-consciousness that's so variable. Of course, it is only one consciousness, and just the many aspects of its manifestation in the world. The one light shone through a prism or a diamond.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that the Buddha could only be conscious on, or anybody opinion that we're going to be conscious in one place at one time. Now he could be, if he's going to be conscious on the astral plane, he might fall asleep on the physical plane. I mean, I don't see how he can participate simultaneously in several different planes. I think he has to shift back and forth.
It's in the literature, John, where he was giving sermons to Dominicans as well as to the Davis, and it's a footnote. It's just clearly stated there in the literature how, being like that, it's just like we are limited to just one car. We're in one vehicle, but once you have transcended the laws of that vehicle, you're free to do expanded consciousness. You operate on more than just that primary level.
We have,
Control, but
we're more sort of familiar with the lineal thinking, if you will, but in this case right here, I think we're sequential. When we get to that, when we become a Buddha, we can be all places at a number of places at one time. This is this understanding anyway.
Part of that omniscience, I guess.
And the judge, he fell asleep. He was in India.
Yeah.
And when he awoke, he was back in New York.
Yeah, but he was.
But he was doing things in both places, if you will.
What's the difference?
Yeah. Okay. Well,
he's not a Buddha.
we have we've went way down the rabbit hole today, I guess, trying to get a sense, and we have to understand. We really need to really embody this on a day-to-day basis, and if we can fully understand it, then our actions are going to improve in helping and teaching others. And it's really critical that we get our basic philosophy down for that reason. We're going to end it here. Our time is up. We are going to have a short break. I believe this is the third Sunday, right? And we're going to have a class thereafter around 12:30. We're going to start going over the Bhagavad Gita. We're sort of, we're reading it and discussing it. Thank you all.